Hey, what's up, everybody? Time for another game theory answering questions sort of video. I got asked to talk about more about footsie stuff, I guess, and someone asked me to talk more about proximity guard. I mean, I've talked about a lot of these things before, so I'm trying to think of a way to make this interesting. So I'll talk a little bit more in depth about it. Maybe some stuff you might not know if you've never played old school Street Fighter 2. Maybe some stuff you sort of know, and maybe some little niche things that I've never seen anyone talk about with proximity guard that maybe will be niche to you, and you've never seen anyone else talk about it either. So first of all, and we'll talk about how some footsie stuff changed, going from the Street Fighter 2 series to Street Fighter Alpha. So let's look at some clips here, right? And you can try to guess what's going on, and then I will explain with some other clips. I really like the turbo color. Turbo color and normal Ryu color. Those are my favorite Ryu colors. I don't know about you, but those are my favorite colors. What's that? Okay, so anyway, proximity guard in the original Street Fighter 2 series goes from basically 3/4 of the screen away compared to Street Fighter Alpha where it's not even a quarter of the screen away. And it really locks you in, right? So if I try to walk back here, you'll see, look, I'm stuck. I won't even move backwards, right? Whereas if this happens, say, in a Street Fighter Alpha game, and this is something that I want to talk about a more niche topic that I have not seen talk about. I want to talk about the lag time of proximity blocking and how you can use it in footsies, or it was used, I guess, right? Because as you can see, obviously, all these mashing on jabs, you would think my guy would be edging backwards, but that term might sound a little, maybe that's not the correct term to use, but edging backwards. But if I were to do, say, this in a game like Street Fighter Alpha, you would see your dude start to slowly move backwards anyway, but not in a game like Street Fighter 2, right? So here we have something you can see. The lag is so great that even me trying to walk backwards, when you are playing footsies like this, right, you will catch up to the other guy. He cannot walk backwards, right? Even though you can move continuously across the screen, he will be stuck in guard, right? And this is important because I've talked about, especially if you think about Street Fighter 2, where you couldn't even poke with the original Street Fighter 2, I'm saying, where you couldn't even poke with Ryu's fireball because he had that extra hurt box on his knee. Right. And of course, we didn't know back in the day that he had an extra hurt box on his knee, but we just assumed oh, fireball is better for some reason, right? Maybe this poke is worse, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But in original Street Fighter 2, where I said footsies came from, it came because you were mashing on duck short. And duck short is sort of like that impenetrable wall because it just had so much priority. And that's what you use to check people when you would play footsie with them and beat their pokes because, again, there weren't a lot of actual attacks that hit characters ducking that were standing. So inevitably you did a lot of duck short to check that character's other duck low that they would probably be doing the poke you with, whatever it was, right? Even something like stand medium punch. A stand medium punch. Not even a jab. I can walk forward with stand medium punch and the character will not walk backwards. And so I can walk up, stand medium punch, right? Get in range for a throw range, right? I mean, that's crazy. I'm holding back, right? So, and there's going to be a lot of examples of this lag that I've never actually seen anyone else actually talk about with proximity blocking. Normally, it's just that proximity blocking, it's so far away in old school Street Fighter. But what does this clip show? Let me see. So here we're at that range. Look at my spacing. Man, I got good spacing for an old guy. Stand medium just barely whiffs, right? Now I go for a throw, right? Let's see what happens here. Shows out a range jab. Now, what happened right there is, and what I want to explain in this video is, when your character is in neutral in old school Street Fighter, or if they are doing a normal themselves, that stun, that lag time of blocking does not apply to them. So what you're going to see in a lot of these clips is if I were to press back on the controller and the guy whiffs an attack, let's say, I cannot move backwards then. And that will then allow the character to be in range to then poke me with pokes that they normally can't poke me with, to throw me from ranges that they normally can't throw me with, right? But if I were just to keep my character in neutral and then wait for their normal to whiff, I can then move faster away from them than if not. Almost as if it's like a quasi real block stun, okay? And this also applies to normals. So a lot of people, maybe if you have a more, not as a in-depth knowledge of old school Street Fighter, if you didn't play those games, and you'll see a lot of commentators too, they will talk about this. They will talk about that, they'll try to tell you that a lot of people are just whiffing normals because it's a fake fireball, right? Whiffing normals is not always just a fake fireball in old school Street Fighter. When you whiff normals, it's that kind of impenetrable footsie kind of thing. If your character had a good mash on jab, whatever, short, whatever it might be. And it locks the other guy into place, right? So then they cannot move back. And it's like a quasi sort of block stun that it'll actually allows you, if that other character or your opponent accidentally hit backwards, it allows you to potentially throw them from farther than they normally can be thrown because they can't move. Whereas if the character themselves was just in neutral, I can then now walk back from that throw. I can now then walk back from that normal. If I were to do a normal myself, mashing on jab, short, whatever it might be, I can then walk backwards, even though normally I would not be able to. Did you see what I'm saying? Here, mash forward, do you see that? I whiffed the stand short. Because I whiffed the stand short, Ken can no longer throw me from that range anymore, right? Because even though he walks forward, I am now allowed to walk backwards because the stand short kind of embodies two different things happening at that time, right? It keeps me from going into block stun, all right? The quasi block stun, the block animation, if you will. More examples here probably. With the medium, jab. Now we can see, just to show that I would be in range for the duck forward, right? Now we have here. Boom. I start to walk back, so it's going to miss, right? But hopefully I'm, my quality control here, hopefully I recorded this correctly. Medium. Did you see that? Whiff. Now it's going to hit me. Because even though I didn't actually block anything, the game has lag time with proximity blocking and I cannot move. Well, I can move, you know what I mean? But, I could jump backwards or whatever, But hopefully you get what I'm saying. Hello. Dude, my mic went out for a second, dude. I was like, what the fuck is... Please tell me I don't have to record this again. So you can see jump normals do it too. Blah, 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 blah. Which is important in some matches because, and this is like really niche kind of stuff, some characters, when they do jump normals, right, you will, specifically with a character like Zangief, when you do a jump normal with Zangief, his body actually flips when he does it. So you can actually put the other character in block stun, proximity blocking, and if you time your jump roundhouse correctly, Zangief's sprite will flip and the anti-air will miss him. And it keeps the guy in that sort of quasi block stun when he goes for a throw, right? Let's see some other examples here. What do we have here? Okay, so this is an example here. Very niche kind of thing. Hopefully this, hopefully this is what I'm showing here, right? Okay. This is a very niche sort of example too. And I want you to roll with me here. Let's say we are theoretically at a range against the opponent where our anti-air options are with, say, a Shoto. We might think the sweep, the neutral jump roundhouse, or like a forward jump roundhouse, whatever it might be. But let's say that I am erring on the side that in this specific theoretical scenario, I want to sweep the guy because there's no trip guard, you know what I mean, in original Street Fighter 2. So let's see this again, right? He whiffs a jab. Now I go into this block stun, quasi block stun that makes it so even though he's still jumping, so you can tell he has a few frame head start, I cannot walk backwards to now range my sweep as an anti-air, right? But if I were to do this, I'm in normal, I'm in neutral, I did nothing. Now I can walk backwards and actually sweep him. This would also apply if I were to be mashing on a normal myself, right? At that specific situation, right? So if you were to say, get yourself caught there and say, oh, I got stuck, blocking for a little bit, so now my spacing is fucked up, you would have to instantly react like, oh, fuck. I thought I was going for, a sweep, you know what I mean, anti-air, but now I can't do that. Theoretically from this range, I could probably, still do the neutral jump roundhouse, but, roll with me here. So now I would have to do probably a stand short or a DP, and I'll show a DP. But that gets into like the intricacies or whatever of like old school Street Fighter, that the lag time of proximity blocking is not something that I've actually seen talked about. And it's something that I've seen when people talk about the game, they'll often say that those normals are just for a fake fireball, and they're not really seeing the bigger picture, how it can even affect what I can anti-air with at a different space, right? Because just them whiffing a normal and then jumping gives them a head start, unless I am in neutral, so to speak, or doing a normal myself. But if I'm pressing back, that fucks me, right? So what else do we have here? And so this is an example, say, and then Street Fighter Alpha, proximity guard was extremely changed. Well, if we look at Sagat here, boom, look at that. Boy, Sagat has the fastest, walk back animation in the game. So that's like an extreme example. You know what I mean? Like, we'll show it again. Like, look at that. Boom. Street Fighter Alpha is quite a bit different with proximity guard in that. And that's definitely one of the things that I think about Footsies that changed with Street Fighter Alpha. I also think that, they started, in old school Street Fighter, there weren't a lot of, there were, I mean, a lot of the differences in old school Street Fighter was with like standing guard. And, I think of characters like DJ and Balrog are pretty obvious characters that have like a kind of drastically different kind of standing guard. But, in old school Street Fighter, you might think Dalsum has like a high ducking guard, you know what I mean? Or something like that. And some stand normals that could hit him. But once you started getting into the Alpha series and Street Fighter started progressing, if we're talking about, normals and footsies, you started having situations where like, oh, wow, if this character's big, they can't duck the stand jab. You know what I mean? Those kind of like became more of a common occurrence, right? And then, of course, when I think about footsies and, Street Fighter Alpha, you think about how there's not proximity normals. So you have normals like, can stand strong is just obnoxious, right? It can anti-air you. You can't duck it. You know what I mean? That's what I think. I think about footsies like that. And of course, I showed footsies in the other video. You just started seeing as, once you even got to like Super Turbo, the priority of moves started changing, you know what I mean? And then Street Fighter Alpha, you could see more priority of the moves changing. So you had a bit more, some moves had to function differently, especially when you have less normals. So you have different kind of normals that are now serving too many purposes. Like, again, Ken Stand Strong is such a great example of is a great example of like a busted normal that shows why not having proximity normals is bad, right? Whereas I would say the example of, say, a Ryu stand forward in Street Fighter Alpha is an example of a kind of interesting mix mash of moves because of how the hurt boxes work and how it actually works with footsies and compensating in certain angles. Like, it's an interesting move if you think about it like that. Whereas, you look at other moves like this and then it's just like, oh, that move is just, it's just stupid in this game. It just doesn't make sense, right? That's not even getting to Street Fighter Alpha 2. Fuck me, right? But so anyway, I think these are the last clips. So if we're thinking about footsies, then you know what I mean. Do I show the DP here, right? So I mean, like, see, I'm checking here all the way from like half screen away, right? You know what I mean? Especially, and again, this is if you think about like Street Fighter 2, where Ryu could not poke with fireballs, where the game was just so slow in general, right? I mean, I got to mash duck short like a motherfucker because I'm trying to get in, right? And and if the character's like, well, fuck, I can't beat this. If he tries to start holding back though, you know what I mean? Well, he can't walk back to create that space that he wants to create either, because it's this sort of magnet, this sort of gravitational field is pulling him in. It's allowing me to try to get closer, right? Because he can't kind of keep me out from that. Because if you think about at this range where my duck short wins, I technically am not at range to actually DP. You know what I mean? So I have to use the normals to beat this kind of thing, right? You know what I mean? Because that wins. So I have this normal and these like footsies that are like functioning in multiple different ways. My duck short keeps the guy in check. It keeps their pokes in check. You know what I mean? It's like function in multiple different ways, right? Then once I can get in, I'm in range for the sweep. And someone's gonna be like, well, you could try to sweep Gal's low forward. Okay. You know what I mean? Roll with me here about what I'm trying to talk to you guys about, right? But once then you're actually in range for Gal to block the sweep to the fireball. These other kind of ranges, right? So anyway, those are the kind of like footsie things that I think about when I think about proximity guard in old school Street Fighter. And I think that is the question that I was getting asked, right? Anyway, remember if you like the videos, like, sub, silly, comment, share, support the channel if you want. I appreciate it. Thanks. The end.